Hello there, welcome to lesson number 7 in our series on using FluidDesigner for 3D printing to create pendants. In today's lesson we're going to show you how you can use a gear object, which is a built-in function in FluidDesigner, to create a pendant. So if you start off FluidDesigner, first of all we need to go to Learning Projects, Jewellery Projects, Pendants. And we're doing lesson number 7, so you need to drag and drop the object lesson number 7 onto the workspace, which is this one. So if we start the screencast key, so any key presses I make should be displayed here. So this is the object that we're going to create in today's lesson, and it's actually a gear tooth, so more used in engineering, but we're going to modify it to make this pendant, just to give you some ideas of how you can use built-in functions in FluidDesigner, and also how you can join connectors to objects. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to add a mesh, and we need to use gears and gear. So add a mesh, gears and gear. And the Properties panel opens up here, and as you can see we've got an object in the middle of the screen here. So if we go to view and zoom to selected, that's the startup object, and as you can see it is a gear, which is more commonly used in engineering. So we need to change some of these parameters in this window here. If this window is not open, you can just press T on the keyboard for toolbox. And what do we need to change? Well, first of all we're going to change the number of teeth from 12. You can clearly see there are a lot of teeth here. If we just change it down, scroll it down, we can take it down to 3. Next thing we want to change is the radius. Well, it's currently 1. If we just open up the properties window and look at the dimensions of this object, it's 2 millimeters. So it's 2 millimeters approximately across here, the external diameter. So I'm guessing that the radius is probably this value, 1 millimeter. So if we increase that to 2, as you can see, yeah, our X dimension has gone up to 4. So we want to change the radius to 10. So there's 10 millimeters, and as you can see, we've now got dimensions of 20 millimeters, or in other words, 2 centimeters. So that's okay. We now want to change the width to 3 millimeters. So let's see what happens when we change the width. Well, yeah, as you can see, the width is the height as we're looking at it at the moment, or the width of the gear tooth. So this is the height as we're looking at it at the moment. We want a value of 3 millimeters, so we can't do that by clicking. So we're going to type it in. Now you do need to type 3 mm for millimeters. I think if you don't put the mm, yeah, you get 0.05 millimeters, so you do need to type 3 mm for millimeters. So that's the height of the object, and we can see the height here is Z. Now notice Z is 6 millimeters. The blue arrow is the Z dimension. So this width here is actually 3 millimeters up from the grid and 3 millimeters down, to give you a total height of 6 millimeters. We then want a base value of 2 millimeters, so let's just click and see what happens here. Okay, well you can see it's filling it in, it's going into the object there, so the base is filling it in here. We want a value of 2 millimeters, so again we'll type 2 mm for 2 millimeters. So that's giving us some depth here. We then want a dedendum of 1 millimeter. So we've got something called addendum and dedendum. So let's just look at what happens when we change these values. Okay, so the dedendum is going in here. So remember we selected 3 gear teeth. Okay, we can't see the 3 gear teeth very clearly at the moment because of the changes that we've made previously, but when we change the dedendum, we can clearly see the 3 gear teeth. So the dedendum is going inwards from the outside of the tooth. So we want that at 1 millimeter, so I'm going to type 1 mm. So that's presumably this value here will be 1 millimeter. Now if we change addendum from 0.1 to 1 millimeter, well, we'll just click up and see. You can see that the addendum, it's building up on the tooth. That's what addendum is doing. So we want 1 millimeter, so I'm just going to type it in. Okay, so those are the values that we want for this. So we can now shut down this toolbox window. We don't want to see that anymore. Now, one of the things about this particular object, if we zoom in, there are no faces here. We've built up this by changing, I think it was the base value. Yeah, the base value, that gives us this thickness. But what we've got is a shell. So if we try to print this, well, we wouldn't get anything. There's just no thickness to this object. Now, we could solidify it, but it'll solidify the whole thing. But what I want to do now instead is I want to add some faces on the inside of this object. Now, the hard way of doing this, first of all, we need to go into edit mode with the tab key on the keyboard. I'll just move that out of the way as well. So I've just pressed tab on the keyboard to go into edit mode. And if I just press A on the keyboard, that will select and deselect all the faces. Now, one thing I could do, it seems like we're in edge select mode at the moment. Let me just right click the mouse and select selection mode vertex select. I could select, and I'm holding down the shift key here, I could select 4 vertices there and press F and fill in a face there. And then I could work my way around and fill in all of these with faces all the way around. Now that takes a bit of time, it's a bit messy, it's a bit fiddly, it's not impossible, but there's a better way of doing it. So with this face selected at the moment, I'm going to press X on the keyboard and delete the face. So we've got no faces on the inside there. So what I need to do is I need to fill in faces all the way around here. And there's a quick way of doing this. And the way to do it is if I select the bottom rim of this object and the top rim of this object at the same time, there's a special command which will fill in all of these faces for me. Now, first of all, I need to go to selection mode edge select. Now at the moment I'm just selecting one edge at a time. If I hold down the Alt key, I can select all of the edge around the bottom there. You can see it's all highlighted. And similarly, if I hold down the Alt key, I can highlight the whole of the top edge. In order to highlight both of them at the same time, I need to hold down the Alt key and the Shift key at the same time. Unfortunately, it's not displaying that down here. So I'm holding down Alt and Shift, and I've now highlighted the bottom rim, inner rim of the object, and the top inner rim. So with those two highlighted, I'm now going to fill it all in with faces. Now we can't actually do that directly within the FluidDesigner menu. We do need to click on this plus sign up here and click on the Blender interface. So when we do this, the menu system here will change from FluidDesigner to Blender. And what I now need to do is, we're in edit mode, so we go to mesh and we're dealing with edges here. And what I'm looking for is to bridge the edge loops. So this makes faces between 2 or more edge loops. So the loops are the top and bottom faces. So bridge edge loops is what I need. And as you can see, what that's done is it's filled in faces for me quickly all around the inside of this object. So that's in the Blender one. Now to switch back to FluidDesigner menu, I just click the Blender one again and just click in this Show Debug Tools to get rid of that Blender icon. So I'm now back in FluidDesigner menu system. So there are in fact 2 menu systems here, the Blender one and the FluidDesigner one. Now the next thing I need to do is, well, first of all, I'll come out of edit mode, so tab key on the keyboard. I now want to add this connector, and connectors are already pre-built for you in FluidDesigner. If you've done some earlier lessons, you should have seen them. And the connector that we want is in the 3D templates folder. As you can see, there are a range of connectors there. We want this one that's connector 5x5x3, And the way to get that into this workspace is not to drag and drop, it's to go to append. So if we go to File and Append, and we need to look for 3D templates connectors, and we want the 5x5x3 rounded connector in this instance, and the folder we need, it's not the mesh, it's actually object. So we go to the object folder and we highlight the object connector 5x3 rounded, and we append it. And what that does is it brings that connector into the current workspace. And what we now need to do is to position it, and we need to position it, as you can see in the finished object, somewhere here. Now I'm going to delete this original object because it's going to get in the way as I do this manipulation, so I'm just going to highlight it and press X on the keyboard and delete it. I now need to select the connector. I need to make sure that that's what I've got selected. Now if we go to view, and if we view it from the top, I want to, if I just drag it over to the left here and position it like that, and if I just go view and view it from the front, now you'll see that it's not at the right angle at the moment, so we need to rotate it. So we could press R on the keyboard, or if I go to the information icon here, now the axis that I need to rotate it, well, we've got the x-axis here and the z-axis. The axis I need to rotate it is actually the axis going into the screen at the moment. That's the y-axis, that's the one that I need to rotate it about. So if you just click on rotation Y, you'll see which way it's going. Well, that's no good, we're going the wrong way there. We actually need to go the other way, so we need to go to minus. So if we type in -90, that will actually rotate it for us and give us the right orientation. So if we go to view and front again now, and we just close this down, and if I just zoom in, what I can now do is I can just drag this out a little bit until I can see my hole clearly. And yeah, there it is, that's okay. We've it seems aligned quite well. There's the gap at the top and the bottom is uniform. The gaps at the sides here are uniform because everything's centered about this point here, and we've got the hole sticking out. So that's what we're looking for. Okay, so what we now need to do is to join these two objects together. And again, if you've seen earlier lessons, what we must do is to use a function called a Boolean operation. Boolean is the mathematics of set theory, and where we can combine two objects together. And so what we do is we highlight the gear, and we then go to the properties window, and we want the modifiers icon, and we're going to add a modifier called a Boolean modifier. And there are three different operations we can do: intersection, union, and difference. Now we want to combine two meshes in an additive way, so we need a union. We want to join a union between the gear which we've got selected at the moment, and the connector. That's what we're trying to do. Now if I just go into wireframe mode and we just zoom in here, you'll see that we've got this grey area on the inside of the object. When we run this Boolean operation, those internal faces, the bottom of what is the connector, they will be deleted by the mathematics that's going on in the background, and we'll be left with just the yellow bits. That's when we apply the Boolean operator. So if we go to apply the operator, we must go to Tools, Object Tools, and convert it to a mesh. So that will apply the Boolean modifier. Now it doesn't look like it's actually done anything at the moment, but if we just switch to material mode, you may be able to see that there's some yellow lines here, and it's kind of interference. And what's happening is we've got two objects here. Always when you use this Boolean operator, you get left with one of the original objects. So we can delete that with X on the keyboard. So we need to always get rid of that. And if we just go to wireframe again now, you'll see we're not in yellow anymore because we've applied the operator, but all those internal faces have now disappeared. The Boolean operation has deleted them. We've just got faces on the outside of the object, and that's key to printing in 3D. We must have that. Okay, so we've now created our object. I suppose we could just move it to the center a little bit again. We need to save it. So as is usual in FluidDesigner, File and Save As. Go up through the menu system and look for My Projects, Jewellery Projects, Pendants, and we save it as 06 as a gear pendant. Now we can't print Blender files, so we do need to export this, and we like to export it as a wavefront object file. That's a printable file format, and we export it to the desktop. And we do need to run some checks on this. So we do need to go to Netfabb Basic always and open this up, and I suspect we're going to have some problems. So it's 07 gear pendants, and so we open that up, and yet sure enough, okay, there's a warning red triangle, and there's some red markings going on here. So let's see whether Netfabb can fix it. So we go to Extras and repair the part, and Netfabb's telling us that there are errors all around here. And if we just move the window across, we'll see how many problems there are. So if we click Update, there are 32 border edge problems, and there's one hole. So if we run Automatic Repair and execute it, and run Update again, you'll see that they've gone away. We haven't got any problems there now, according to that. So apply the repair and remove the old part. Our warning red triangle's gone now, and things are looking good. So what we need to do is to save it. So we go to Part, export the part as a wavefront object, export it to the desktop, and the repaired file, that's the printable file format now. So there's our gear pendant with a connector on it. That's it. That's the end of this lesson. Thank you.